just as Juniper Radcliffe stepped down the aisle, Thatcher Hale trembled as he declared her too poor to marry, turning silence into hostility. Before wounds could heal, the massive oak doors burst open, and her father, Sterling Blackwood, returned after 25 years. What dark conspiracy will now be revealed? The dawn's light slipped through the thin curtains, painting a warm glow across the apartment's walls. Juniper Radcliffe stirred awake in her cherished old bed, its cotton sheets brushing against her skin, reminding her of the white wedding dress hanging by the wardrobe door. It wasn't a lavish designer piece, but a carefully curated find from a sample sale. She'd scoured the city for months to find this simple yet elegant dress that fit her modest budget. Now the morning light danced on its faint creases, a gentle reminder that happiness didn't require extravagance. Juniper sat up, stretching before tucking her soft hair behind her neck, her eyes sparkling with excitement and nerves. A small smile crossed her lips as she thought of her beloved kindergarten students, where she sowed seeds of love to fill the gaps of her own childhood. Stepping out of the bedroom, she took a deep breath, the faint aroma of coffee from the kitchen awakening her senses. A glass kettle sat beside the small fridge, above which hung a vibrant collection of her students' colorful drawings. One picture, with the scrawled words, "Miss Radcliffe's getting married," made her chuckle. The crayon strokes carried a childlike warmth, reminding her of the nurturing place that had fueled her dreams. Clutching a ceramic mug, Juniper cradled it as delicate wisps of steam rose. The coffee's gentle bitterness, tempered by a sneaky spoonful of sugar, sharpened her senses. The cozy kitchen glowed under soft yellow light, the table scattered with teaching magazines, and a wall calendar marked with the big day. Outside, the hum of traffic was a subtle reminder that life marched on, despite the radiance awaiting her. Setting the mug down, she exhaled softly, steadying her heart for the most important day of her life. These quiet moments felt like the calm before stepping onto a stage where all eyes would turn to her. The phone's chime broke the silence, signaling the arrival of Marigold Radcliffe, the woman who'd sacrificed her youth for her daughter. A gentle knock followed, and the door creaked open, revealing her mother's radiant smile and glistening eyes. "Are you ready, my dear Juniper?" Marigold's soft voice carried pride and anticipation. Juniper smiled, her gaze full of gratitude. "As long as I have you and Callie, I'm steady." Before she could finish, Calliope Callie, her lifelong friend, burst in, clutching a delicate bunch of baby's breath. With a playful nudge at the dress, Callie teased, "I brought fresh flowers to make this morning shine." Laughter erupted, dissolving the tension like a spring breeze over a wild meadow. Marigold gently helped Juniper zip up the dress, her trembling hands brimming with love. He chimed in, "Mrs. Radcliffe, she's going to outshine any princess," warming the room further. Amid the chatter, a flicker of sadness crossed Juniper's eyes. Memories of a childhood longing for a complete family. Perhaps it was that absence that made her cherish this moment so deeply. As the dress hugged her waist perfectly, Marigold lifted the delicate veil onto her daughter's hair, her eyes brimming with joyful tears. The grand cathedral glowed with light streaming through towering stained-glass windows, casting shimmering rainbow streaks across the marble floor. The solemn air was thick with the scent of white flowers and scented candles, each Corinthian column standing resolute as if bearing witness to the vows soon to be spoken. The organ's melodious strains echoed through the vaulted ceiling, stirring Juniper Radcliffe's heart with a blend of serenity and anticipation. She stood in a small side chamber, her hand lightly draped in delicate veil, her eyes quietly scanning the pews filled with family and distinguished guests. The chandelier's glow illuminated the intricate carvings on the oak doors, exuding a classical yet opulent charm, like the prelude to a fateful drama. As the music shifted to the bridal chorus, Juniper Radcliffe steadied herself and stepped out. Each footfall echoed softly on the cold stone floor, a rhythmic counterpoint to her racing heartbeat. In the front row, Vespra Hale sat rigid, lips pursed, her icy gaze fixed on the bride. Nearby, two relatives, Ember Sinclair and Rowan Sinclair, whispered faintly, "Did he really do it?" Her mother couldn't bear it, their voices trembling. Further back, a few of Thatcher Hale's business associates stared at their smartphones, seemingly preoccupied with more pressing emails. The atmosphere was stifling, a mix of kind words and skeptical glances. At the altar, Thatcher Hale stood formally in his tailored suit, his shoulders taut with the weight of his racing heart. His face was taut, devoid of the expected radiance. His eyes avoided Juniper Radcliffe's, as if hiding a secret on the verge of spilling. Seconds passed, and the pastor's voice boomed. "We gather in the presence of God," but all awaited the opening words. Then, Thatcher cleared his throat, and the air seemed to still. The candles flickered as if about to die. Suddenly he spoke. "I need to say this." His voice cut through coldly, silencing every murmur. The sanctuary fell so quiet that only the faint rustle of bridesmaid Calliope Hart's dress was audible as she held her breath. "Juniper," he continued, eyes still averted, "I can't do this. You're too poor. This is a mistake." The word poor struck the ornate walls like a hammer, shattering every dream. The congregation gasped in unison, as if the stained glass had shattered, haunted by the chaotic hum of whispers and shock. In an instant, the fresh flowers wilted, and the shimmering light dimmed. Juniper Radcliffe stood frozen, her hands trembling as they fell limp. Tears didn't yet fall. She felt only a hollow echo in her chest. From the pews, Atlas Hawkar's steadfast stepfather rushed forward, his hand steadying her shoulder. "Juniper, are you okay?" His voice was soft but firm, a reminder that even if the world crumbled, she had a rock to lean on. She managed a silent nod, swallowing her pain deep within. Guests began murmuring, some exchanging anxious glances, others rising to leave. Vespra Hale's faint smile relished the moment of fulfilled resentment. Meanwhile, Ember Sinclair adjusted her shawl, whispering to Rowan, "She looks so pitiful." Both watched the bride's reaction with a mix of pity and cruel curiosity. The organ fell silent, replaced by the clatter of heels on stone, the rustle of clothing, and the hurried breaths of souls trying to steady themselves. Amid the chaos, Juniper Radcliffe found a sliver of clarity. Her hoarse voice rose. "Thatcher, you have no right." But Thatcher Hale had already turned, striding swiftly toward the side door, leaving behind irretrievable regret. As the door slammed shut, his footsteps thundered, cleaving the ceremony into before and after the cruel shock. The bride's gown swayed in the cold draft, as if whispering, this wasn't the end, but the prelude to a new journey. In the moment of silence and turmoil, tears finally spilled down Juniper Radcliffe's cheeks. She bowed her head, letting her sobs blend with the droplets falling on the marble, creating a mournful melody. Then, regaining composure, she looked up at Atlas Hawk. Their eyes locked in a silent vow. No storm could break a heart that chose integrity. As guests dispersed, only her loved ones remained, wiping tears and clasping hands, bearing witness to the pivotal moment when Juniper Radcliffe crossed the threshold of pain to embrace the truth of her own worth. The massive oak doors at the cathedral's end burst open with a thunderous crash, scattering the shimmering light from the stained glass windows. The solemn atmosphere froze, every guest's heartbeat echoing in the hollow reverberation. Beneath the crystal chandeliers, a silver-haled man emerged, clad in a meticulously tailored suit, his confident stride tilting the very space around him. Two stern bodyguards flanked him, their eyes scanning the pews, silencing all doubt. Whispers erupted. Ember Sinclair leaned toward Rowan Sinclair, mouthing, "Who is he?" While Vespra Hale's eyes flickered with shock, guests craned their necks, phones slipping from hands, and even the orchestra paused its melody. From the side aisle the man advanced, his leather shoes clicking rhythmically on the marble floor, each step a proclamation. This was no ordinary guest. Light caught his silver hair, revealing chiseled features and deep blue eyes like the ocean's depths. As he neared the back pews, Juniper Radcliffe's family fell silent. Marigold Radcliffe stiffened, clutching Atlas Hawke's hand, while Calliope Callie Hart drew a sharp breath, stifling her astonishment. All eyes fixed on the newcomer, yet none dared speak, for in that moment, authority and mystery enveloped the space. The man drew closer, his face composed but his gaze softening as it grazed the floral arrangements. Time seemed to slow, the cathedral's grandeur contrasting with the quiet awe spreading across every face. Juniper Radcliffe stood at the altar steps, her white wedding gown etched with delicate folds, tears glistening in her eyes. She felt each breath catch, her heart pounding as the silver-hailed stranger locked eyes with her, his blue gaze searing into her soul. Atlas Hawke's hands trembled as they released her, and she felt more alone than ever, despite all she'd endured. Murmurs rippled through the cathedral. A guest nearby muttered, "Must be the one from the letter," before falling silent, as no one could confirm anything. Slowly the stranger paused at the densest moment, where Juniper and Thatcher Hale, who had just rejected her, had stood. He cleared his throat, his voice calm yet commanding. "Forgive the intrusion, but this is when I had to appear." The sound stirred the organ into faint new notes, as if seeking harmony amid chaos. All eyes turned to him. Vespera Hale clenched her fists, her voice hissing, Who is he?" Yet no one dared interrupt. The man moved forward deliberately, his black suit accentuating his tall frame. 3 steps from Juniper Radcliffe, the shifting light seemed to exalt his presence. Then, with a warm yet authoritative tone, he said, "Hello, my child." The cathedral held its breath. Every gaze swung to Juniper, who now looked up, tears clinging to her lash. Light traced her delicate features, illuminating her fragile skin. He gently brushed a silver strand from his forehead and continued in a low voice, "I am Sterling Blackwood." Fingers froze, hearts clenched. A guest's medal clinked faintly as it slipped. Seraphine Vale, the housekeeper, stifled a sob, and Calliope Callie Hart forgot to blink. The gentleness beneath Sterling Blackwood's stern demeanor ignited the atmosphere again, this time with a tremor of hope, and one Juniper Radcliffe ascended a step, her backless silk gown flowing with her movement. Her voice, hoarse, broke the silence. "Father." One word, carrying years of longing, nights spent wondering if she had a father she'd never known. Sterling Blackwood nodded, his deep blue eyes shimmering. "Yes, my child. I've searched for you for 25 years. The space erupted with pent-up emotion. Altar flowers quivered, the delicate veil swayed with the crowd's breaths. Atlas Hawke stepped back, yielding the moment. Marigold Radcliffe wept softly, tears streaming down her cheeks. Calliope rushed forward, gripping Juniper's hand, speechless. The silver-haired man smiled, his warm-hailed man smiled, his warm voice resonating through the cathedral. "Today, fate brought me here at the right moment." It was not just a father's declaration of finding his child, but the prelude to a new journey, where everything would shift and be reborn in the gaze of those ocean-blue eyes. The cathedral erupted in soft applause, mingled with moved sobs, as Sterling Blackwood opened his arms to embrace Juniper Radcliffe, a symbol of a reunion across time and heart. The sleek black car glided down the quiet street, carrying 3 weary but resolute figures. Streetlights danced on the car's surface like tiny flames, illuminating the etched lines of concern on the faces of Juniper Radcliffe, Sterling Blackwood, Marigold Radcliffe, and Atlas Hawke. Outside, the world spun in its daily rhythm, but inside the car, time seemed suspended, each breath heavy with reflections on the past just unraveled in the cathedral. When the door to the cozy apartment swung open, the white-painted walls seemed to soothe their fractured souls, the warm wooden floor catching their trembling steps and unspoken burdens. Stepping into the living room, Juniper Radcliffe paused, her gaze sweeping over the worn velvet sofa where she'd once listened to rain patter, and the low bookshelf brimming with childhood keepsakes. The oak coffee table bore faint scratches, marks of countless lively debates with her best friend Calliope Callie, Hart, now a silent witness to this grave moment. Marigold Radcliffe sighed softly, hanging her coat on the rack, her hands trembling as if to conceal a pain buried for 25 years. Atlas Hawk guided his wife to a chair, his warm eyes laced with worry, like a ferryman navigating a raging flood. The air carried the lingering scent of drip coffee, a faint comfort for hearts steeped in bitterness. Sterling Blackwood stepped to the center of the room, his presence like a steadfast mountain, his voice low. Marigold system, we need to talk about why my daughter vanished for 25 years. His words landed heavily, pressing against the seemingly calm atmosphere. Marigold Radcliffe turned, her eyes red-rimmed, her chest rising and falling. What are you saying, Sterling? Her trembling hand tugged at her silver-streaked hair, as if wrestling with shame and guilt buried in the past. Why did you disappear with her, leaving no trace for me? Sterling's question cut like a blade. Afternoon light streamed through the window, casting two opposing silhouettes, a father haunted by loss and a mother worn by fear. Marigold bowed her head, her voice choked. I was scared you'd take Juniper if I meddled in your world. I didn't want our daughter caught between us. Her trembling words shattered any pride, leaving only a lone mother facing her past mistakes. In the quiet room, Atlas Hawk silently moved to his wife's side, resting a hand on her shoulder as if to share her burden. What did you do that night? Sterling pressed. Marigold closed her eyes, dark memories flooding back. A hastily packed bag, streetlights glinting on a tearful woman cradling her child, her heart pounding with dread. I changed our names, moved, ran, she confessed, each painful memory spilling out. I was afraid if I didn't, I'd lose my daughter forever. Her explanation carried the sharp tang of tears, spreading a deep sorrow. Sterling Blackwood felt his heart slice open, pain mingling with compassion. He lowered his head, his voice trembling. You didn't tell me, didn't give me a chance to make it right. I promised to be a good father, but I failed. His eyes lifted, catching the faint glow of the ceiling light, a testament to a broken vow. In the cramped apartment, the argument's heat faded, giving way to a complex silence. Juniper Radcliffe's silent witness to the story suddenly ignited with resolve. She stepped forward, standing firm. Enough! Her voice rang clear and resolute, quelling the tide of negativity. All eyes turned to the young bride, once humiliated at the altar, now rising in her faded wedding gown. I deserve the truth from both of you. Father, mother, stop blaming each other and tell me everything. I need to know why I didn't grow up with my father, and why you made that choice. June locked eyes with Marigold Radcliffe, tears glinting with unyielding determination. Let's continue this conversation somewhere quieter, where I can hear the full story. Her voice was like a warm breeze in winter, dispelling the lingering gloom. Atlas Hawk gently guided his wife to the soft sofa, while Sterling Blackwood nodded, his eyes heavy with regret but alight with a flicker of hope. In that moment, the small apartment was not just a shelter for Juniper, but a forum to close a chapter of sorrow and begin rebuilding the frayed bonds of a family torn apart for 25 years. The afternoon sun filtered through the window, casting warm streaks across the wooden floor, like a gentle greeting for the reunion about to unfold. Juniper Radcliffe and Marigold Radcliffe sat across from each other on the worn sofa, a witness to countless cozy evenings with Calliope Callie Hart. Between them, Atlas Hawk leaned against the chair's armrest, his gaze pensive, like a fisherman tending his net before casting it into the current. Nearby, Sterling Blackwood set up a small makeshift stand, stringing up photographs from Juniper's childhood, a vibrant mosaic of a memory chest locked away for 25 years. Sterling bent slightly, lifting the first photo. Juniper at 7, beaming at her kindergarten graduation, her square cap tilted proudly. He sighed, his warm voice resonating like a soft melody in the quiet room. Back then, I was in Tokyo, chasing my company's first project. I promised I'd be back in time, but the project kept unraveling. His hand brushed the photo, the tiny handwritten notes on its edges dancing as if telling the fragmented story of a father and daughter. Next was a photo of 10-year-old Juniper, grinning mischievously beside a church Christmas tree. "I saw you sing carols in a local paper's video," Sterling said, his eyes glinting with regret. Each photo was pinned with a small clip, interwoven with memories and brimming with love. Marigold Radcliffe gazed at these moments, her tearful eyes radiating longing. "I remember that night. She cried because you weren't there." Her voice cracked, each syllable settling like morning dew on grass. A photo of the family on a summer picnic followed. Juniper eating ice cream, Marigold clutching her hand, Sterling waving at the camera. Behind it lay a blurred stretch of time, hesitation between love and career, fear of losing a child and unrelenting remorse. Sterling paused, gently removing a clip, as if extracting a piece of his heart from the past. For the first time, in this home filled with keepsakes, Juniper saw her father not as the polished man who appeared in the cathedral, but as a heart that had ached for 2 decades with longing for her. As dozens of photos found their places, Juniper stopped before the final frame. Herself at 4, learning to draw a tree in preschool. Her curious eyes peering through oversized glasses, Binu bent down, touching the glass as if reaching for her younger self. "I was always here," Sterling said softly, his voice steady but brimming with sincerity. "I saw you every day, even if only through pictures." The room seemed to burst in a moment of profound stillness. Marigold Radcliffe wiped a tear, her voice trembling. "You searched everywhere, but I hid every trace. I was terrified you'd take Juniper. I just wanted to shield her from a lavish but empty life." Each explanation carved deeper into her regret. Atlas Hawk nodded, grasping the torment of a lone mother. Juniper tilted her head, her eyes alight with resolve. "Mom, I know how much you love me. You've sacrificed your youth to protect me. Dad, I know you waited tirelessly. Now, let's write the next chapter together. No more secrets, no more distance." Her voice was like a clear stream, soothing every wound. The warm room brimmed with hope. As dusk painted the walls, Sterling Blackwood smiled and suggested, "Let's start with the small things. Let's share our lives, every story, every unspoken dream." Juniper nodded, her eyes sparkling like stars after rain. Marigold handed her daughter a small wooden box containing childhood diaries she'd kept hidden, as if passing back the shattered pieces of memory. In the moments that followed, 3 generations gathered, opening memories, sharing pain and dreams. Atlas offered words when needed, and Callie Hart appeared bringing pastries and coffee, adding sweetness to this day of renewal. Under the golden lamplight, the old apartment transformed into a cozy haven where kinship and trust were rebuilt. As the first story concluded, Juniper stood, picking up a small frame with 2 photos of mother and daughter. One of Juniper babbling her first words, another of her crying over a lost teddy bear. She placed it on the stand, closing her eyes and breathing deeply, imagining the stand filling with new memories in the days to come. A quiet beginning, but brimming with aspiration, like a seed sprouting under the first spring rain. In that moment, the Radcliffe family, for the first time, looked in the same direction, weaving a sturdy bridge of love across time. The wooden door of the small apartment closed behind Juniper Radcliffe, sealing off a day brimming with upheaval. As she adjusted the newly set family photo frame, the doorbell chimed. Bracing herself against hope, she descended the stairs. There stood Thatcher Hale, his charcoal black suit pristine like a cold melody struck by lightning. In his hand was a bouquet of pristine white roses, ironic like the shattered mirrors he'd hurled at her heart. Thatcher's eyes held no remorse. He raised the bouquet, his voice cutting through the silence. "Juniper, give me 5 minutes." The roses trembled in her hand, their petals quivering like the anxious pulse she couldn't quell. Juniper Radcliffe steadied her breath and nodded faintly. He stepped inside, placing the bouquet on the oak table beside the family photos, where just yesterday her father, Sterling Blackwood, her mother, Marigold Radcliffe, and her stepfather, Atlas Hawke, had unraveled their fractured past. The air grew heavy, as if compressing every word he was about to utter. "I'm busy," she said softly. "But—" Thatcher Hale rested a hand on the doorframe, as if barring her escape. "I know I hurt you." His voice rang out, cold and sharp, like a hammer striking a wall of trust. "But I had to see you. I thought about it all night." His face was strained, yet lacked the warmth to kindle hope. Juniper stepped back, the old wedding dress hanging in the living room flashing memories of tear-soaked betrayal. "Thatcher, I heard enough. You didn't just call me too poor at the altar, you confirmed my deepest fear. Money always trumps love," she sighed, her tears long spent. "I don't want more apologies." Afternoon sunlight streamed through the window, casting faded streaks on the wooden floor, like calluses on her heart. Thatcher Hale touched the hanging dress, its white silk once a symbol of fragile happiness. He fell silent, then met her gaze, his eyes a mix of regret and desperation. "Can you give me another chance?" He clenched his fist, his voice trembling. "I love you, Juniper. Not for what your father can offer, but for you." The words landed like a low note in a chaotic symphony, but to Juniper Radcliffe they lacked the warmth to heal her wounds. She shook her head, turned, and climbed the stairs, leaving behind a chilled silhouette. As Thatcher Hale's shadow faded, her phone buzzed. It was Sterling Blackwood, her father. His voice on the line was soothing, like a desert breeze from years past. "Juniper, I have an invitation." She lowered her face, her heart softening at his name on the screen. "Dad?" she whispered, her voice fragile, like the first note of a hopeful melody. Sterling continued, "I've bought plane tickets for you to the Caribbean. I want us to spend a week there, just father and daughter, to start anew." The white roses in the living room suddenly seemed out of place, like an unfinished ballad awaiting its climax. Juniper gazed out the window, realizing the city never paused, though her life had slowed. A strange calm settled over her, the Caribbean, where relentless waves soothed stormy souls. She drew a deep breath, the imagined salt of sea air grazing her tongue. "Dad, I'll go," she replied, her voice soft but resolute. Hanging up, Juniper Radcliffe closed her eyes, letting the day's memories drift slowly by. Thatcher Hale had shown her the calculating face of love. Sterling Blackwood offered a promise of a fresh start, free from deceit. In the living room, the wedding dress could now be taken down, making way for a thread of peace and a spark of hope. She stepped onto the balcony, filling her lungs with crisp air, letting the distant sea breeze sweep away the remnants of the past. Amid the rustle of falling maple leaves, Juniper Radcliffe sank into reflection. Love or family, which would she choose? In the end, she smiled to herself. "I'm not afraid to start again." Though storms might roar, the Caribbean awaited with its gentle waves. The waves whispered. With each surge, the sea cleansed wounds, and with each retreat, the breeze kindled a resilient spirit. In the sunset's glow, Juniper felt ready to release the darkness and step toward a radiant new horizon. The private jet glided through fluffy clouds before descending onto a private runway nestled amid lush coconut groves. Juniper Radcliffe sat by the window, her heart pulsing with excitement, while Sterling Blackwood stood outside the passenger cabin, his welcoming smile radiant. The aircraft door opened, and a salty sea breeze rushed in, enveloping the space like a lover's embrace. Juniper descended the steps, her feet touching the sun-warmed tarmac, the scent of salt mingling with tear flowers awaking her senses. In the distance, coconut palms swayed in the late afternoon sun, their rustling leaves composing a natural symphony of invitation. Sterling approached, arms outstretched, his white linen shirt pristine like a banner of peace. Juniper leaned forward, hesitating briefly under her father's gaze before resting against his sturdy shoulder. The first embrace wasn't tight, but it was enough for two hearts, separated for 2 decades, to find a shared rhythm. Behind them, the security team and crew smiled, maintaining a discreet distance to grant them this private reunion. Ice on Montgomery Island unfolded like a dream. Turquoise waters glimmered under the sunset, pristine white sands hugged the shore, and honey-hued wooden villas nestled among palm trees. Sterling and Juniper climbed into a classic Land Rover, its glossy black body reflecting the sky's hues. On the stone-paved path to the villa estate, Juniper was captivated by the scenery. A small waterfall trickled by the roadside, vibrant orchid gardens bloomed in purples and pastel pinks. Sterling occasionally pointed out the window. That's Seraphine Vale's orchid garden. She spent her life nurturing this place. Juniper nodded, her eyes brimming with curiosity and gratitude. As the Land Rover parked at the main entrance, she stepped out, her flat shoes leaving prints on the warm wooden floor. From the open doorway, Seraphine Vale, graceful in a pale green linen uniform, greeted her. "Welcome, Miss Radcliffe. I'm thrilled to finally meet you." Her voice blended formality with warmth, like a guardian of family treasures. Juniper bowed politely, a mix of unfamiliarity and comfort stirring within her. They entered the open-air grand hall, its sliding glass doors revealing the sea, bathed in light, with white marble and rare wood furnishing. On a shoulder-high wooden shelf, dozens of framed memories hung at angles. Juniper as a child, her school speeches, preschool drawings, a slow-motion reel of her youth. Juniper approached slowly, her fingers grazing a photo of her at 7, clutching a small bubble tea, eyes alight with joy. Sterling smiled. "This was the first picture I found when I started searching." After a moment of reflection, Juniper was led to a cozy dining room, where a simple yet elegant dinner table awaited. Low-hanging lanterns and flickering candles illuminated handcrafted ceramic plates. The menu featured fresh seafood, passion fruit butter, lobster, seared scallops with sea purslane, green mango salad, and tropical fruit with basil. The fragrant aroma, laced with the briny breeze, made Juniper sigh, her taste buds dancing to a local melody. Sterling pulled out her chair, his eyes gleaming with pride. "I know you like simple but refined." His voice was soft yet clear, like a tranquil stream. Juniper smiled, sipping crisp white wine to temper the saltiness. "You've prepared everything so I can relax and forget the noise out there," she replied, her gaze affectionate. They clinked glasses, the sound resonating in the tropical night like a melody for two hearts in sync. Dinner unfolded with the distant sound of waves and Sterling's tales of the island. How he bought the raw land over 20 years ago, transforming it into a private paradise, a retreat from his demanding career. Juniper listened, enthralled, sensing the loneliness that had seeped into the stones and winds before he had a daughter to share it with. In that moment, they were not just father and daughter, but partners in rekindling life's purpose. As dessert held coconut ice cream and honey yogurt was served, Seraphine Vale invited Juniper to visit the Heart Room, hidden behind a dark wooden door, with softly draped curtains and light from a single warm desk lamp. The room stunned her. An entire wall behind a desk was covered in maps, photos, notes, and documents pinned in layers, connected by red strings like a web of memory. At its base, dozens of carefully wrapped gift boxes, each labeled with a year of her life, from birth to now. Juniper's heart clenched. Here was Sterling's boundless longing and hope, a shrine to every fleeting moment of her life, preserved for this day of reunion. She knelt, touching a box marked Year 5, first time you called me Dad. A tear rolled down her cheek. Sterling entered, his eyes tender. This is the heart room. I called it that because it holds everything about you, for the day we'd reunite. In sacred silence, father and daughter stood amid a sea of memories and love. Juniper turned and hugged Sterling tightly, the embrace deep enough to blur all past losses. The sea breeze rose like invisible applause, witnessing two hearts aligning. Under the lamp's golden glow, they vowed, from today, a new journey truly began. Juniper Radcliffe returned to New York like a leaf drifting back to its roots, but nothing felt the same. Her small apartment now seemed foreign under the glow of distant street lights, the desk cluttered with books and colorful drawings from her kindergarten students. On Monday morning, she entered her classroom with a professional smile, but her heart hummed a different rhythm. The persistent chime of her father, Sterling Blackwood, evoking their recent island getaway. Her students chirped about her radiant glow, an anonymous bouquet adorned her desk, and even the landlord had cheerfully congratulated her the day before. Juniper sensed she'd become a focal point, yet amid the admiring glances she offered only a reserved smile, concealing a blend of excitement and unease. That afternoon, Juniper hurried to Sterling Blackwood's office on a high floor of a glass skyscraper. The elevator's ding echoed with each stop, reflecting her fleeting image in the polished steel doors. As the doors parted, a hushed hallway glowed under white LED lights, leading to a stately reception area. Seraphine Vale, head of support staff, greeted her with a warm smile. "Miss Radcliffe? Mr. Blackwood is expecting you." Juniper strode across the red carpet, each step resonating with a new strangeness. This wasn't her familiar classroom, but the stage of an elite corporate world. In the expansive boardroom, late-day sunlight streamed through glass walls, bathing a polished ebony table. Dozens of leather chairs held senior executives. At the center sat Peregrine Crown, a commanding figure whose sharp eyes dissected every movement, sipping water with a faint smirk. As Juniper entered, his gaze locked on her as if catching an unfamiliar melody. He rose, his tall, lean frame accentuated by a silver-gray suit, extending a hand to invite her to sit. "Miss Radcliffe, I hear you're here to meet and learn about the company?" His words hung in the air, stretching the room's tension. Juniper smiled, replying, "Thank you, Mr. Crown, for having me. I'm here to understand more about the educational projects the Blackwood Foundation supports." Her voice carried sincerity, but her eyes betrayed a guarded edge. Peregrine tilted his head, assessing her. "The foundation has invested heavily, but recent developments have raised concerns among the board. We need to ensure you grasp the roles and responsibilities of involvement." The word responsibilities landed like a stern reminder. As the discussion shifted to long-term strategies, Juniper tracked the subtle glances exchanged between Peregrine and other directors. Their looks were calculated, like chess pieces on a financial board. At times, Peregrine nodded, pointing to growth charts, then glanced at Juniper. "Your presence has not only drawn public attention, but also sparked significant leaps in credibility. However, it could disrupt a succession plan that was previously clear." A veiled reference to his own anticipated role within the conglomerate. After the meeting, Juniper walked quietly down the hallway, her heels echoing softly. Suddenly, Seraphine Vale appeared at a corner, her eyes anxious. She leaned in. "Miss Radcliffe, please be cautious. Mr. Crown is brilliant but fiercely ambitious. Your father's world is no longer your familiar kindergarten." Her voice carried a warning, like a droplet in a cave, each word echoing 1,000 times. On a small balcony overlooking the park, Juniper leaned against the railing, breathing deeply. Night was falling, the city lights twinkling like a sea of stars. She recalled the stunning orchid garden on the island, Seraphine's blooms, the heart room filled with childhood photos. That was a world of tenderness, but now she'd entered a new arena where every step demanded scrutiny. She opened her phone to a message from her father. I know about today. I'm nearby if you need me. Just call. The brief note was a lifeline amid turbulent waves. Juniper turned, resting her hand on the photo of 3 Radcliffe generations, her father, mother, and herself, on the table. Drawing strength, she released the frame, pocketed her phone, and smiled to herself. I won't let anyone lead me by the nose. This is a new path, but I choose my way. The night breeze carried scents of palm and sea mist, soothing her soul. By evening, Juniper returned to her apartment, setting a cup of ginger tea on the table, her gaze lifting to the family photo wall. The road ahead was fraught with challenges, but she was ready to face them. Peregrine crowned with his veiled ambitions, Seraphine Vale with her sharp warnings. All were tests to prove herself. Like a sail catching the wind on the yacht of her life, Juniper Radcliffe knew storms would come, but with preparation she could sail forth toward a brighter future. The night fell like a velvet curtain, draping the city in shimmering ribbons of light. Juniper Radcliffe and Calliope Kelly, Hart, met silently in an empty cafe, its dim golden glow whispering to every sense. No words were exchanged at first, just the faint hiss of the coffee machine and the rich, seductive aroma of espresso. Their eyes locked with determination, like 2 assassins in the dark, ready to unearth hidden truths. Callie set a brown leather bag on the table, unzipping it softly to reveal the key to Thatcher Hale's condo, a gift pilfered from a fundraising gala where he'd been careless. The key gleamed under the light, a ticket to the gates of a secret underworld. Juniper exhaled softly, her fingers brushing the key, her heart pounding with anticipation. They sipped their final drops of coffee. Its warmth coursed through them, fueling their courage. Their car pulled up to a towering condo, its sleek design a crystal monolith amidst a concrete jungle. The hallway was silent, their footsteps light as drifting paper. Juniper pressed the buzzer, and the door creaked open, revealing a sterile interior, marble floors, pristine white leather sofas, and abstract paintings like sails catching the wind. Everything was so pristine it seemed no secrets could hide, yet the polished surface only highlighted the faint scratches beneath. Callie moved forward, scanning the room, and they split up to search the desk. Juniper rifled through magazines and shoved aside sunglasses while Callie patiently tugged at drawers. Within 10 minutes, a thick folder labeled Crown Initiative appeared on the desk. Like miners striking gold, Callie carefully opened it, revealing photos of Juniper from childhood. A beaming Juniper at her kindergarten graduation, her innocent smile framed like ancient wood. Beside them, emails marked top secret between Thatcher Hale and Peregrine Crown, detailing plans to approach, gain trust, and gather information. Juniper, trembling, raised her phone, snapping photos like a predator seizing evidence before the prey could flee. In that moment, a sheer curtain fluttered, a breeze slipping through a cracked window. They froze. Listening, a car pulled into the lot below. Time felt like dew wilting in the morning sun. The girls barely breathed, afraid to rouse the hunter. As darkness spilled through the glass toward the horizon, Callie's fingers grazed another stack of files. A post-nuptial agreement, granting Thatcher full control of assets should Juniper be absent or incapacitated. The draft, dated per the plan, was punctuated with commas sharp as blades. Juniper shook her head. They don't just want the money. They want to strip me of my entire life. Her words rang like a captive's long-suppressed lament. When slow knocks echoed at the door, they scrambled, stuffing the files into the bag. Callie pulled Juniper into the hallway, their steps soft on the granite, hearts racing. Below, the car's engine hummed. Its headlights flickered like a waiting trap. The girls slipped out, blending into the night like phantoms, disappearing into an alley until the car vanished. Through a maze of narrow streets, they returned to Callie's apartment. At the laptop, Juniper pinned each photo to the screen, analyzing emails and messages, both public and encrypted. The dialogue between Thatcher and Peregrine emerged. surveillance plans, media manipulation, and the moment to deliver a fatal blow to Juniper's reputation. Each line was a dark confession, unraveling the conspiracy behind their staged marriage. Callie's hands ached, but her eyes blazed. "We have enough evidence, now we just need to get this to your father." Juniper nodded, snapping screenshots and transferring them to a small USB. They hailed separate taxis, hearts pounding with hope and fear, like thieves cherishing stolen treasure in a vast prison. At Sterling Blackwood's penthouse, the girls stood before the wide door, hearts heavy as broken-winged butterflies. The door opened, and Seraphine Vale ushered them into a conference room with a mix of concern and kindness. Sterling stood at the table, eyes curious. "What brings you here so late?" Juniper stepped forward, USB in hand like a ticking bomb. Biting her lip, she plugged it in, displaying the cascade of photos, emails, and contracts before the rapt board of directors. The room flickered with the screen's light, then sank into heavy silence. Sterling's eyes burned. "What is this?" Collie's voice was steady. "Proof that Thatcher Hale and Peregrine Crown have been conspiring for 3 years to monitor, manipulate, and ultimately seize control of Juniper's inheritance." Each word was a flame consuming the wall of silence, hands fidgeting to cover mouths. Sterling nodded sharply, eyes gleaming with resolve. "Well done. We'll handle it immediately." The room erupted with plans, and in that moment, Juniper Radcliffe ceased to be a victim. With Sterling and Seraphine, she began orchestrating the next move. A war without weapons, but fierce enough to expose the truth in the blazing light of justice. The photos, emails, and contracts, like living evidence, had unmasked the opportunists. Now it was time for them to pay for their ruthless scheme. The morning sun streamed through the glass panes of the rooftop banquet hall, casting radiant streaks across the red carpet that lined the aisle. Over 50 guests, senior shareholders, renowned lawyers, had gathered, but the atmosphere was far from the formality of a typical wedding. Juniper Radcliffe emerged, draped in a sheer pearl-colored cloak, her eyes gleaming with confidence. At the end of the aisle, Thatcher Hale stood in a tailored suit, his cool facade intact, though his clenched hands betrayed the blow about to strike his pride. The music fell silent as the officiant's voice rang out, "If anyone has evidence to object to this marriage." A hushed murmur rippled through, then Juniper's lips curved into a smile, her gaze sweeping the crowd. Sterling Blackwood stepped forward, commanding in a deep navy suit, his eyes blazing with resolve. He nodded, and from a small speaker, the first image appeared, an email exchange between Thatcher Hale and Peregrine Crown, detailing a plan to approach, monitor, and report Juniper's every move over the past 3 years. Gasps spread through the room as undeniable proof unfolded before their eyes. Juniper raised a champagne flute, her voice soft yet resonant. "I thought this would be the day I pledged my love, but instead it's the day I expose betrayal." The next image showed a draft post-nuptial agreement, granting Thatcher full control of her assets if she were absent or incapacitated, paired with a litany of coercive clauses. Thatcher's face paled, his composure crumbling as numbers and check marks danced on the screen. In the front row, Vespera Hale's shoulders shrank, her chin trembling, while Rowan and Ember Sinclair stared, stunned, at the man who once radiated confidence, now unraveling. Juniper pressed on, her voice smooth but steely. "The truth isn't a lie you can bury. Your plot with Peregrine to keep me from my father has failed." She emphasized Peregrine Crown's name, and the slide shifted to financial records, hidden accounts, and years of embezzlement. Peregrine shot to his feet, his face contorted with rage. "This is a vile smear. You're using your father to ruin me." But under the weight of the evidence and Sterling Blackwood's unwavering stare, Seraphine Vale projected audit logs, revealing forged seals and signatures. Murmurs erupted as several board members quietly slipped from their seats, their eyes heavy with disillusionment. The scene transformed into a silent battlefield. Juniper stepped toward the mock altar, her voice clear and resonant. Today, I don't just polish the Radcliffe name, I defend justice for myself. Sunlight filtered through the palm fronds outside, glinting off her hair like gold. For a moment, the rooftop fell silent, save for the faint clatter of wind against the glass doors. As Thatcher and Peregrine were escorted out, Juniper watched with calm poise. Sterling took his daughter's hand, their eyes meeting in a silent answer to past pain. Seraphine Vale nodded approvingly, brushing a finger across the screen. Reporters on hand swarmed, their cameras flashing like falling stars, capturing the moment justice was served. The reception began in a transformed atmosphere. Instead of champagne, guests sipped green tea and savored fresh macarons, lining up to congratulate Juniper. They spoke of her vision for education, her newly announced Radcliffe Foundation for early childhood education. Juniper's eyes sparkled with joy as she shared plans for supplying learning tools to remote schools, building green libraries, and training preschool teachers. Each word was met with warm applause. 6 months later, Juniper stood before a vast auditorium at the Radcliffe Foundation's headquarters. Behind her, a banner bore the foundation's emblem, a coconut tree in bloom, vibrant green blending with pristine white. Spotlights framed her on the podium, her face a star in the dark. The audience spanned all walks of life: politicians, entrepreneurs, teachers, parents, and preschoolers in green uniforms. Thunderous applause greeted her smile as her voice rang out baldly. As a little girl painting in kindergarten, I dreamed of a world where every child could learn safely and fully. Today, that dream comes true. She recounted her journey, from the shattered wedding day to reuniting with her father and exposing the conspiracy. Her words hushed the room, every eye fixed on her. Juniper continued, "Children don't judge each other by wealth, but by kindness. That's the heart of the Radcliffe Foundation." She raised a gilded key to learning, a gift from Sterling, and declared proudly, "This key belongs to anyone who hungers for knowledge." After her speech, Juniper stepped down to accept bouquets, her eyes alight with emotion. Sterling stood beside her, his broad shoulders a pillar of support. Marigold Radcliffe and Atlas Hawk enveloped their daughter in tearful embraces. Calliope Callie Hart slipped in, whispering, "We did it." Reporters clamored for interviews, but Juniper waved them off gently. "Let me spend this moment with the children first." At the event's close, amid laughter and the clatter of toy horses, Juniper stood alone on a balcony, gazing at the city twinkling below. She sighed, her heart swelling with gratitude and hope. "I found my worth in the ruins of lies. Now I'll keep planting seeds of hope for the next generation." The night breeze carried the warmth of a new beginning, promising that this journey was only just starting. Having witnessed the journey from the shocking altar betrayal to the miraculous reunion of Juniper Radcliffe and Sterling Blackwood, I've embraced the strength of resilience and the power of genuine sincerity. Thank you for following Millionaire and Heart Stories. See you in the next tale.